The chair turned, and the man who came to sell his empire saw the face of the woman he threw on the street 20 years before. Richard expected a handshake. He received a sentence. She didn't say, "Hello." She said, "Long time, Richard. You look smaller." The silence that followed lasted only 3 seconds. But for Richard, it lasted 20 years. 20 years before, Grace was an engineering student at a state university. Full scholarship. First in her family to set foot on a campus. While others slept, she worked on projects at 3 in the morning. Sharp mind. Hands that turned ideas into reality. Professors called her the most brilliant mind in the class. But Grace carried more than books. She carried a son. Daniel was 3. His father died before he was born. Grace's parents were also gone. She was everything that boy had. And he was everything she had. On the same campus, there was another kind of student. Richard, son of a wealthy family. Imported cars in the parking lot. Never needed to study for real. Bought papers. Paid tutors. But he had something money doesn't buy. Charisma. And predator's eyes. Richard saw Grace presenting a revolutionary project to the class. Saw the professors applauding. Saw the brilliant mind behind those tired eyes. And saw an opportunity. He courted her with flowers. Dinners. Promises. "You're special, Grace. Different from these empty rich girls." Grace, who never had anything, believed she had found a partner. Someone who saw beyond the poverty, beyond the exhaustion, beyond the dark circles of someone who studies by day and works by night. He met Daniel, pretended to like him. "I'll be the father he never had," he promised. Grace gave herself, body and soul. She didn't know she was handing her life to a thief. They married right after graduation. Richard proposed a partnership. "Let's build an empire together, Grace. You have the brain. I have the connections." It seemed fair. It seemed like love. Grace designed the first products. Richard presented them to investors. She worked 18 hours a day while he went to dinners and parties. Contracts came. Millions came. The name on the papers. Always Richard. Never Grace. She accepted. Because she believed in us. Because she thought love meant silent sacrifice. Because Richard said it was better this way for business. And she trusted. Daniel grew up watching. A quiet, intelligent boy who saw everything. Saw his mother drawing projects until 3 in the morning. Saw Richard arrive drunk and complain about dinner. "That boy is not my problem," Richard would say when he thought no one heard. Daniel heard, and kept every word. In public, Richard was the perfect husband. "My wife is my inspiration." In private, the mask fell. "You came from nothing, Grace. I gave you everything. Never forget." He forbade Grace from attending meetings. "You don't know how to talk to investors." He demanded she sign documents without reading. "Trust me." Grace turned a blind eye. Because she loved. Because she believed. Because she didn't know any other kind of love. The company grew. Richard bought the first mansion. Imported cars. Watches that cost more than the house where Grace grew up. She never asked for anything. Never demanded credit. She thought their success was shared. She didn't know that for Richard, she was just a tool. A tool he planned to discard. 15 years of marriage. The company was worth hundreds of millions, and it was on an ordinary Thursday that everything changed. Grace returned to the office to pick up documents. The door was ajar. Laughter. Moans. What she saw through the crack destroyed 15 years of marriage in 15 seconds. Richard. With Victoria, daughter of an investor. Half Grace's age. On the desk Grace had designed. In the office, Grace had built brick by brick. When Richard saw her, he didn't apologize, didn't feel ashamed. He laughed. "You thought I would stay with a single mother forever? Look at her, Grace. Young, beautiful, from a good family. Look at you. You came from nothing. I gave you 15 years of my life. Be grateful." Grace didn't respond, didn't cry, just looked and kept every word. The divorce was a calculated execution. Richard hired the best lawyers, paid with money Grace helped earn. Documents appeared from nowhere, showing Grace was just an administrative assistant. Bought witnesses swore she never contributed anything significant. The original projects disappeared from the files, as if they never existed. The judge was Richard's father's golf buddy. The gavel struck before Grace finished speaking. Decision. Richard keeps 100% of the company. The house, the cars, the accounts, everything. Grace is left with nothing. No alimony, no recognition, no part of the life she built for 15 years. Nothing. Richard made sure to be present when she left. He wanted to watch, wanted to savor, called the neighbors, wanted an audience for his cruelty. When Grace started carrying the suitcases, he threw the last ones in the yard, in the mud. Daniel, 8 years old, held his mother's hand tightly. Neighbors watched from the windows. No one helped. No one said a word. "Take your son!" Richard yelled from the porch. Victoria laughed beside him, arm around the new owner of the mansion. "He was never my problem." Grace didn't cry. Not in front of him. Not in front of the neighbors. She took Daniel's hand and said only 3 words. "Let's go, son." The boy looked at the mansion one last time, then looked at his mother. And in that moment, something was born inside him. A flame that would take 20 years to become a fire. Rock Bottom was a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood Richard didn't know existed. Stained walls, noisy neighbors, leaks in winter. It was all Grace could afford. She worked as a freelance engineer by day, waitress at night, woke at 5, slept at midnight, took 3 buses to get to work. On weekends, she did odd jobs, repaired electronics, gave private lessons, did anything that paid. Daniel studied in public school. Patched uniform, but brilliant. Some nights, dinner was bread with butter. Grace never complained. Never cried in front of her son. Daniel helped where he could. Washed dishes, cleaned the house, did homework alone so as not to be a burden. One night, when Grace came home exhausted from work, he said, "Mom, one day I'll buy a company for you." Grace smiled, exhausted. "No, son. We will build one together." She didn't know she was making a prophecy. The reconstruction began on a sleepless night. Grace looked at her old notebooks of notes. The original projects were at Richard's company. But her mind wasn't. She remembered every formula, every design, every innovation. Everything was engraved in memory. She started drawing again. On wrapping paper, at the kitchen table. Daniel, 12 years old, watched. "What are you doing, Mom?" "Planting seeds, son. Planting seeds." Grace used her savings, 3 months of rent, to register a company. The office was the corner of the apartment living room. She offered consulting. Small projects. Local clients. Worked at dawn while Daniel slept. The first contracts arrived. Small. But they arrived. Daniel, a teenager now, helped on weekends. Filed papers, answered phones, learned. One day, Mom, one day. Years passed. The company grew. Slowly, but grew. Grace hired 1 employee, then 2, then 10, then 100, moved to a small office, then medium, then the largest in the city. Daniel graduated in engineering at the same university where Grace studied, with honors, with his mother's name tattooed on his heart. He joined the company, vice president at 25. The problem Richard threw away had become the most valuable piece on the board. No one connected Grace and Daniel Holdings to Richard's humiliated ex-wife. The single mother he threw in the mud had built an empire. In silence, in the shadows, waiting. Meanwhile, Richard lived on inertia. 20 years of ostentation, mansions, new cars every year, women who lasted less than the cars. Victoria left him 2 years after the divorce, took half of what he had. Others came, others went. All took something. Richard's company grew on the base of projects Grace had created decades before. But he never innovated, never created anything new, never had an original idea, just reaped what she had planted. And old harvests eventually end. When the numbers started falling, Richard did what he always did. Looked for someone to save him. A multinational wanted to buy companies in the sector. He announced the sale as the biggest deal of the decade. He had already spent the money he expected to receive. New yacht, beach house, cars for women. He didn't know the multinational had a name. Grace and Daniel Holdings. Didn't know the CEO was the woman he threw on the street 20 years before. The meeting day arrived. The most important day of Richard's life. Or so he thought. $10,000 Italian suit, Swiss watch, polished shoes, cold champagne on the table, lawyers around him, ready to close the deal of the century. "Where is the CEO of this multinational?" Richard asked impatiently. "I want to meet who will make me even richer." The door remained closed. Richard waited, tapped his fingers on the table, looked at his watch, and then the door opened. Slowly, a woman entered. Impeccable suit. Posture of a queen. Gray hair now. But the same eyes. The same steel eyes he had last seen 20 years ago, holding the hand of an 8-year-old boy in the rain. Richard looked. Didn't recognize. Then recognized. The champagne trembled in his hand. Spilled on the table. "Grace." Richard's smile disappeared, as if someone had cut the lights. He opened his mouth. Closed. Opened again. "Grace." "What? What are you doing here?" She smiled. Calm. Controlled. Steel wrapped in velvet. "Hello, Richard. Long time. You look surprised." She walked to the head of the table, the place that had always been his in every meeting. Sat, crossed her hands. "Sit. We have a lot to talk about." Richard couldn't move. His legs wouldn't obey. You are the owner. Founder. Owner. CEO. Grace paused. Let each word weigh. Built from zero, with the same hands you said were good for nothing. With the same mind you called administrative assistant. With the same projects you stole, only better. Much better. Richard tried to swallow. The saliva wouldn't go down. The door opened again. A 28-year-old man entered. Tall, confident. The same eyes as Grace. Daniel. Vice president of his mother's company. He walked to the table. Stopped in front of Richard. Looked into the eyes of the man who called him a problem 20 years before. "Remember me, Richard?" Richard looked. Confused. Then horrified. "The problem you sent away. The boy you threw in the mud along with my mother's suitcases." Daniel placed a folder on the table. Opened it. Bankruptcy documents. "I grew up, studied, worked, and now He smiled, the smile of someone who waited 20 years for this moment. Now I'm going to sign the papers for your bankruptcy. Richard looked at his own hands, the same hands that threw suitcases in the yard, the same hands that pointed to the door while a mother and son left in the rain. Now they trembled. Richard tried to smile, the salesman's smile, the smile that always worked, that opened doors, that closed deals, that fooled people. Grace, we can negotiate, for old times' sake, for the good times. Grace laughed, not cruel, tired, like someone hearing a joke too old. Good times? She stood, walked to the window. You threw me on the street with my 8-year-old son, said he wasn't your problem, called him baggage in front of the neighbors. She turned, looked directly into his eyes. That baggage is my vice president, and will sign the papers for your destruction. You know, Richard, I spent 20 years building this. Every brick, every contract, every sleepless night. And for 20 years, I imagined this moment. She paused. The acquisition is cancelled. Richard lost the color in his face. I don't buy companies built on lies and on pain. Richard's world collapsed in slow motion. He had spent the money he expected to receive. New yacht, beach house, cars. Without the sale, he couldn't pay the debts. Creditors knocked on the door. Partners abandoned ship. The same lawyers who destroyed Grace now sued him. The company he stole went to bankruptcy auction. Grace bought, for a fraction of the value, with money left over from petty cash. Daniel signed the papers beside her, in the same room where Richard humiliated her 20 years before. Mom, we did it. Grace didn't smile. It wasn't victory. It was justice. A week later, Grace's office, the largest in the city, the one she built from nothing. Richard appeared. Didn't look like the man from magazine covers. Wrinkled suit, dark circles, trembling hands. Looked like a ghost. Grace, please. I have nothing left. He fell to his knees. I lost everything. The house, the cars, the bank accounts. I have nowhere to live. Nothing to eat. Please. Grace looked at him. The man who humiliated her. The man who threw her son away like trash. The man who stole 20 years of her life. Do you remember what you said when you threw my suitcases in the yard? Richard didn't answer, just trembled. Take your son. He was never my problem. She paused long. I remember every word. Daniel remembers, too. Grace picked up an envelope from the desk, placed it in front of him. This is enough for you to start over. A small apartment, a used car, money for 6 months. Richard looked at the envelope, confused. Why? After everything I did? Grace stood, walked to the door. Because my son taught me that the sweetest revenge isn't destruction. It's building something so big that the person who humiliated you becomes a footnote in your story. She opened the door. Now go, Richard, and don't come back. Richard left that office smaller than he entered, hunched, broken, a shadow of the man who threw suitcases in the mud 20 years before. And Grace? Grace remained exactly the size she always was. The world could finally see. The company was renamed. Grace and Daniel Engineering. Mother and son. Together. On the same sign. In front of the tallest building in the city. Grace created a scholarship program for single mothers in engineering. Every woman who received the scholarship was a Grace who wouldn't have to wait 20 years to rise. Daniel got married. Had a daughter. The name, Grace. Grandmother held granddaughter for the first time and smiled. She has your eyes, Mom. She has your future, son. A future no one can take. An autumn afternoon, mother and son on the balcony of the new building, the city stretched below, the same city that once rejected them. The sunset painted the sky golden. We did it, Mom. Grace looked at the horizon. No, son, you did it. I just didn't give up. They stayed in silence. The wind blew. The leaves fell. Daniel took his mother's hand, like he did when he was 8 years old, like he did that rainy night when they left the mansion with suitcases in the mud. Thank you, Mom, for never letting go of my hand. Grace squeezed his hand. Thank you, son, for being my reason to get up. Richard threw suitcases in the yard. Grace gave back an empire in his ashes. He called her son a problem. 20 years later, the problem signed the purchase of his company. The universe is not in a hurry, but it has memory, and every door you close in someone's face one day opens. On the other side, every tear you cause one day returns, like an ocean